No one had knocked on my door in over 3 years, and I liked it that way. I lived alone, in the house my mother left me, the only place on this earth that ever made me feel protected. Not because of a high fence or a strong deadbolt, but because this home carried her breath. She was the only woman who ever put me first. The house sat on the northern edge of Tacoma, Washington. Not luxurious, not worth $1 million, but to me, it was a fortress. A legacy my mother built through exhausted double shifts, skip treatments, and every dollar she saved to buy each brick of this place. When she passed away from heart failure, I was just 24. Since then, this house hadn't just been where I lived. It was all I had left of her. Every morning, I made coffee in the tiny kitchen where she used to hum while cooking, staring out into the garden she'd filled with rosemary and sunflowers. Every evening, I sat by the attic window where she once read stories to me as a child. Every brick, every creak of the floorboards whispered the same message she left behind. Don't let anyone take this place from you, Natalie. I kept my promise. And I thought that would be enough. I had a steady accounting job at a small downtown office, earning just enough to live without help. I lived just fine on my own, and I preferred to keep my life private. I was grown enough to know that peace was something you guarded, with vigilance. The only person who could ruin that, unfortunately, was my biological father. Thomas Harris used to be a calm man. That was before he left my mother and married Rebecca, a blonde woman who wore too much makeup and spoke with a sugar-coated voice that made your skin crawl. They had a daughter together, Haley, 4 years younger than me, spoiled to the point she believed everything in life should belong to her. My father never called unless he wanted something. He didn't show up to my college graduation, didn't call on my birthday, and after my mother passed, he didn't even attend the memorial service. Instead, he sent a flower arrangement with a printed card. Deepest condolences. From the Harris family. I wasn't part of that family, and they weren't part of mine, at least not until they showed up out of nowhere. Not to check in, but to demand. I got a call from my father one Thursday afternoon while I was preparing quarterly reports. He had never called midweek unless something was serious, so I paused my work and picked up. Natalie. His voice came through low and deliberately gentle. Can we meet this weekend? There's something we need to discuss as a family. What is it? I asked directly. It's not something to go into over the phone. Rebecca and Haley will be there too. Hearing that made my throat tighten. That kind of family discussion was always code for something I didn't want to hear. That weekend, I went to his house as planned. The moment I stepped in, I saw Haley sitting at the kitchen table, her pregnant belly obvious under a tight ash-gray dress. She smiled at me like we were best friends, then quickly flipped her hair and put on the tired look of a world-weary mother-to-be. Haley, my half-sister, whom I was never close to, was now 26 and 6 months pregnant. Her boyfriend, a guy named Mason, whom I'd only met once at a Christmas party, had left her a few months back after a public Facebook meltdown. Rebecca gestured for me to sit, placing a cup of herbal tea in front of me. Her eyes sparkling like what she was about to say came from the purest love. Haley really needs a stable place to stay, she began. Our apartment is too cramped, and the nursery is already taking up the living room. The doctor said stress is bad for the baby, and with the due date coming, we honestly don't have another option. I stayed silent, sensing something was off. Then my father spoke, his tone soft like he was trying to soothe a child. You live alone in that big house, you're not married, no kids, so maybe it's time to consider sharing that space for something greater. I frowned. Sharing? What exactly do you mean? Haley finally looked up, speaking for the first time. Not sharing, really. I mean, if I could move in, it'd be better for me and the baby. And you? Well, you're independent, right? I turned to my father, coldly. Are you seriously planning to hand over my mother's house to Haley? Rebecca jumped in immediately, her voice rehearsed. No one's taking anything. But if you could move into a smaller apartment, just temporarily, then Haley could have the stable environment she needs. And where would I live? We already found a few great options for you, Rebecca said, pulling a stack of printed listings from her purse. 1-bedroom apartments in downtown Tacoma. Close to your work, very affordable. A fresh start, really. Isn't that exciting? I looked at the papers like I'd been slapped. That house belongs to my mother, I said slowly, holding my voice steady. She left it to me. Not to your side of the family, not so you could make me homeless. My father looked away. Haley said nothing, but the smug look in her eyes told me everything. Don't be selfish, Natalie, Rebecca said, stressing each word. Haley is carrying a life. Can't you sacrifice a little for family? Family? I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. If sacrifice means giving up the only thing my mother left me, then no, I can't. No one said a word as I walked out of that house, but I knew the story wasn't over. I saw it in Haley's eyes. That wasn't the look of someone seeking help. That was the look of someone who'd grown used to getting everything she wanted with just a pout. And I was right. The real storm was only just beginning. Less than 3 days later, I got a message from my dad. Not an apology or an explanation, just a link to an article on a news site about family bonds and generational sacrifice. Attached was a short note. You should read this. There's a lot to think about. Before I could respond, Rebecca called. Sweetheart? She said in that overly sweet voice. Family is sacred. No one can live only for themselves forever. If your mother were still alive, she'd want you to do the right thing. I clenched my jaw. That line, if your mother were still alive, was their favorite emotional weapon, and I could see it clearly now. They had no intention of backing off. Haley still didn't speak up much, but her silence was more irritating than words. Every time I stopped by my dad's house for paperwork or signatures, she was there, sitting on the couch, feet propped up on a cushion, one hand on her belly, the other holding a glass of lemonade Rebecca had made for her. Every time I walked in, she'd flash that vague smile, half greeting, half challenge. She never directly said the house would be hers, but the way she looked at me, like she was waiting for me to surrender, was suffocating. That Friday, I came home from work and found a flyer stuffed in the door, a glossy printout listing local support centers and housing rights for single mothers. At the bottom, a handwritten note. You should read this to better understand Haley's situation. No signature. I had never asked for help, especially not from them. I crumpled it and threw it in the trash without a second thought. Still, I was starting to see the pattern. Small, scattered attacks, persistent enough to wear me down bit by bit. 2 weeks later, I received an invitation to a family dinner this weekend. I declined, obviously, but the next day I opened my mailbox and found a flash drive inside. On it was a video Haley had filmed walking through my dad and Rebecca's apartment, cluttered, cramped, and narrated with soft complaints like, "There's no space for a crib. Rebecca has to store clothes in the hallway. I guess Natalie doesn't understand how tight things are." I started to feel branded, the selfish one, the one who didn't get it, the one who refused to help family. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from since college started messaging me on Facebook, asking seemingly concerned but clearly loaded questions. Poor Haley. I know it's hard, but Natalie, you're her sister, right? You live in that house all by yourself? Ever thought about renting out space to help family? I didn't respond to anyone. I didn't need to explain that the house wasn't extra space. It was my mother's legacy. A home I spent years maintaining and protecting. And most importantly, it was my final boundary. The one place no one was allowed to cross without permission. One afternoon, I came home and found a baby gift bag on the front porch. No note, no one around. Inside was a cream-colored newborn onesie, a pregnancy journal, and an ultrasound photo. My chest went cold. They were trying to claim my space in the gentlest and most terrifying way, turning my house into ours, starting by planting emotional landmines. I knew then, if I didn't draw a clear line now, I'd eventually lose everything that was mine. I pulled the ultrasound photo from the bag and stared at it. I didn't hate the baby, but I hated the way the adults around her were using her like a holy token to justify a quiet invasion. I called my dad. "I'm not moving out," I said flatly. "And I don't want to see anything else from your house showing up at mine. This is the last time. I'll say it." He was silent for a long while, then exhaled coolly. "You can't cling to the past forever, Natalie." "No," I said. "I'm protecting what my mother left for me." I hung up. On Tuesday evening, I came home from work and saw a box sitting on my doorstep. No return address, no note. I opened it. Inside was a brand new stroller, tags still attached, a box of newborn diapers, and 3 pastel baby outfits. I stared at the stroller, standing there on my porch like it had a right to be there. I didn't touch anything. I closed the door, stepped inside, and called my dad immediately. No answer. I sent a short text. "Take Haley's stuff off my property. I won't accept it." No reply, but the next morning when I went out to get the mail, the stroller was gone. I exhaled, thinking maybe they finally got the message. I was naive. 3 days later, while watering the plants in my backyard, I heard unfamiliar voices at the front. I walked around and froze. Standing on my porch was my dad, Rebecca, and a woman I didn't know, holding a clipboard. She smiled politely when she saw me, her voice polished like a sales pitch. "Hi, Natalie. I'm Beth from Highland Homes Realty. Your dad mentioned you might need help looking at apartment options." I cut her off. "Please leave my porch, now." She froze. My dad stepped forward, his voice soft and rehearsed. "Sweetheart, this is a great opportunity to find something more comfortable. We just want to help you make the right choice." "I don't need anyone making choices for me," I said, my tone hard as steel. "This is my house. No one invited a realtor here." I didn't say anything else. I just stood there, eyes locked on them, until they turned and walked back down the steps. Rebecca tossed one last line over her shoulder. "We'll talk again soon." That night, I installed more security cameras, front and back. I thought I'd done enough to stop them, but they were just getting started. That evening, I left the office a little before 7 p.m. A cold drizzle had started, and all I wanted was to get home, wrap up in a blanket, and forget the day. But when I put my key in the lock, it didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I pulled the key out, inspected it. It was my house key. I tried the side door. Useless. At that moment, my heart started pounding with every beat. My hands were trembling as I spotted a piece of paper taped to the window next to the front door. "The dad changed the locks for safety. Please call to discuss." I stood there, frozen from the neck down. I pulled out my phone and dialed my father. He picked up after 3 rings. "Hello? What the hell did you just do to my house?" I growled. "Don't get upset," he said, as breezy as ever. "It's only temporary. Haley needs stability, and you've been too stressed. I thought this would make things easier for everyone." "This?" I nearly shouted. "You broke in, changed the locks, and kicked me out of my own house? That's trespassing, and you know it." "Don't call the police," he rushed. "Don't make this a big deal. It'll just make the family look bad." "Family?" I laughed coldly. "What family? Real family doesn't act like this. You have 3 hours to call a locksmith and undo everything, or I will call the police. And I will press charges." There was silence. Then he finally gave in, his voice weaker. "All right. All right, I'll take care of it. I waited in my car for nearly 3 hours, eyes locked on the door. A little after 10 p.m., a locksmith's van pulled up. No one from my family came with them. They didn't dare face me again. But they'd already crossed the line. And I knew the next time, it might not be a key they'd use, but the law. I stepped back into my home as if entering a battlefield. From now on, every door would need more than a lock. It would need paperwork, legal protection, and hard evidence. Because they had made it clear this wasn't just persuasion anymore. It was a calculated attempt to take what was mine. After that night, I never looked at the house the same way. I still loved it. I still believed it was the safest place in my life. But now I understood. It was under threat. And that threat came from the people I used to call family. I couldn't just wait around and hope they'd stop. The next morning, I called a local security company and requested full surveillance installation, cameras inside and out, door sensors, remote alerts, and cloud storage. I didn't hesitate to spend the money. What I was protecting wasn't just property, it was memory. It was the trust my mother placed in me. Next, I booked a meeting with a real estate attorney named Amanda Klein, recommended by a coworker I trusted. Amanda was in her early 40s, sharp and composed, the kind of person who could spot a legal loophole with just a glance. I told her everything, from the polite suggestion to move out to the emotional games and the illegal lock change. Amanda listened carefully, nodding occasionally while jotting down notes. When I finished, she closed the folder and said, "Natalie, I need you to prepare yourself. What I'm about to say won't be easy." I clenched my hands on my lap. "I'm ready." Amanda opened a drawer and pulled out a printed document. It was a scan of a legal consultation. At the top corner was my father's name, Thomas Harris. "About 2 months ago, Mr. Harris contacted another law firm in Seattle," she said. "He inquired about the possibility of reclassifying this house as family property, citing an oversight in the will." I went numb. Amanda continued, "They haven't filed anything officially, but the firm confirmed he asked for legal advice. He provided a copy of your mother's will and the deed to the house." My stomach tightened. "So he planned this all along?" Amanda nodded. "This wasn't spontaneous. Changing the locks was just the surface. Behind it was a months-long plan." I sat there, speechless. Every phone call disguised as checking in, every sugary word about family, every gift left at my door, every calculated glance, they all had a purpose. They didn't need me to agree. They just needed me exhausted, off balance, and ready to give up. Amanda placed her hand on the file. "Thankfully, your mother's will is airtight, legally notarized, witnessed, and clearly stated. At this moment, they don't have a solid legal case. But if you don't take formal action now, they may keep pushing, possibly through family law avenues." I nodded faintly. What I felt wasn't just anger anymore. It was a blend of shock, pain, and a deep aching betrayal. My father, the man who once held the back of my bike, who taught me to tie my shoes, had calmly strategized how to erase the one thing my mother left me, as if I was just an obstacle. He never asked. He never offered to compromise. He just tried to outmaneuver me through legal manipulation. Amanda carefully laid out the next steps, filing ownership confirmation, sending a formal cease and desist, and triggering legal safeguards against unauthorized claims. I signed every page, though my hands were still slightly shaking. On the drive home, I stopped at a red light, fingers tight around the steering wheel. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't think about work. I just stared into the rearview mirror, as if trying to glimpse the girl I used to be, the one who still believed in her father, the one who thought blood meant something. But she was gone, and I knew the rest of this battle wouldn't just be about paperwork or court filings. It would be me, against people who no longer deserved to be called family. I hadn't heard anything from them for nearly 2 months. But that silence didn't last. I knew it the moment the doorbell rang on a cold, damp Friday evening, the kind of night that felt like the calm before a storm. I checked my phone. The camera feed showed my dad, Rebecca, and Haley. This time, with a newborn wrapped in a soft pink blanket in her arms. I didn't want to open the door, but I also didn't want them thinking I was afraid. I opened it, keeping my eyes on the camera recording above the door frame. No one said anything for the first few seconds. Only the faint coo of the baby in Haley's arms broke the silence. Rebecca was the first to speak. "Natalie, big sister to baby Juliet. We need to talk." I crossed my arms. "I didn't invite them in." "Haley gave birth 3 weeks ago," she continued. "She needs a calm environment and family support. And you're her sister. This isn't just about a house anymore, it's about a child's future." Haley looked up, no longer smug. But there was still no apology. She just held the baby tighter, like a shield. My father stared at me, eyes seemingly tired, but I knew better. He was acting. "You don't have to forgive what happened," he said. "But you can still choose to do the right thing." I looked at the three of them, each playing their part, each with their own tone and tactic. But they all revolved around one thing. They weren't giving up. They were just changing strategy. I nodded slowly. "Fine. You've come all this way. Then let me be clear." I stepped outside, pulling the door half closed behind me. I don't have children, but that doesn't mean I don't understand what it feels like to be a child betrayed. Rebecca tried to interrupt, but I raised a hand. "No, let me finish. My mother left me this house, not any of you. She knew exactly what kind of man my father was, and she did everything she could to protect me, even after death." I looked straight at my father. "And you, not only did you fail as a father, you tried to turn me into an obstacle. You were ready to take me to court to steal the home my mother left me. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" His face froze, though he tried to keep composure. Billy spoke softly. "I didn't know anything about that. I need help." "You've always had help. Ever since you entered this family, everyone put you first. You're used to being spoiled, to being defended. But this house isn't a reward for who cries the loudest. And Juliet," I looked down at the baby in her arms, "is not a justification for someone to take over my home." Rebecca's face flushed. "You're being too stubborn. The baby hasn't done anything wrong. But the three of you are using her." I cut in. "I won't let anyone use a child as a tool to force me to give up my mother's legacy." I took a step back, hand on the doorknob. "Leave my property, now." "You're going to regret this," my father said, voice low. "No," I replied. "I'm doing what you should have done long ago. Protect my real family." I slammed the door, locked it, and immediately called the police. "My family is harassing me at my residence. They've already been given written notice, but they showed up again, trying to apply psychological pressure." 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up outside. I didn't open the door. I stood behind the curtain, watching through the window as the officers spoke to them. No arguing, no scene. Just quiet humiliation as the three of them were forced to leave. Slowly, that night, for the first time, I wasn't afraid anymore. I knew I was right to set boundaries, and this time, I wouldn't let anyone cross them again. After the police came, I never heard a knock on my door again. No more handwritten letters asking for understanding, no more baby items dropped off as emotional hints, no more late-night calls from unfamiliar numbers. This silence, this one, was real, and I knew it was the end. I had warned them many times. I gave them chances to back off, but they chose to push, to manipulate, to step over the line. So now I got to choose too. I started with the simplest thing, cutting all contact. I blocked my father, Rebecca, and Haley. I blocked their secondary accounts too. The ones Haley had used to post cryptic, guilt-tripping messages. I updated the privacy settings on every social media account. No one could tag me. No one could message me unless they were a close friend. Every mutual connection I had with family got reviewed and cleared, one by one. I didn't want anyone mediating for me. No whispers, no moral lectures dressed up as concern. Things like, "You're still sisters. Why not sit down and talk?" I wasn't sitting down anymore, and I wasn't talking to people who treated my pain like gossip that could be soothed by vague advice. One weekend morning, I deep cleaned the entire house. I reorganized my mother's library, wiped down every photo frame in the hallway. There was one photo I hadn't dared to touch before. My mom and me on my college graduation day. She was beaming, and I had red eyes from holding back tears. I reframed it and placed it on my bedside table. Not for nostalgia, but to remind myself each day that someone once loved me without condition, and I would honor that by never bowing, never surrendering. I returned to work with a new mindset. Before, I worked out of obligation. Now, I was building something. I enrolled in a course on asset protection and estate planning. I opened a savings account in my mother's name. Funds set aside specifically to restore the garden she had once designed but never finished. I also reconnected with friends. The ones who used to call me too strong but now finally understood why. I didn't share every detail. I just said, "I'm cleaning out my life, letting go of what's no longer healthy." One of my closest friends, Lena, said something I'll never forget. "Some doors don't close out of hate. They close out of dignity." I didn't hate Haley. I wasn't angry at Rebecca anymore. And I stopped expecting my dad to ever call and say sorry. Healing didn't depend on that anymore. What I needed was clarity. What I needed was boundaries. And now, I had them. A month later, I received a letter from my lawyer. All legal protections on the property were finalized. The documents were stored in 2 separate locations, with alerts set up in case anyone tried to file changes to the title. The house, though modest, was now surrounded by preparation and resolve. That evening, I lit a small candle in the living room and played the jazz record my mom had loved. No more footsteps I didn't trust. No more eyes watching me. Just me, the house, and the quiet I had fought for with every ounce of belief and pain. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew this much. I wouldn't back down. I lived in my mother's house, but more than that, I lived as the woman she trusted when she handed me the final key. That spring arrived earlier than usual, not because of the weather, but because my heart finally felt lighter. For the first time in years, I opened the living room window in the morning without anxiety. I didn't check the security cameras first thing. I wasn't waiting for a threatening message disguised in sweet words. On Saturday afternoon, while I was watering the backyard, Lena, my best friend, showed up unannounced. She brought a large tote bag filled with string lights, pastel cups, and a handwritten card. "Housewarming Party 2. Restoring Peace." I laughed. "Housewarming? I've lived here 6 years." Lena winked. "It's not a housewarming for the home. It's a housewarming for you." I didn't know what to say except yes. We threw a small get-together the following weekend. Nothing extravagant, just 6 people. Lena, 2 close co-workers, the older neighbor who once lent me a ladder to fix the roof, and my cousin and her husband visiting from Spokane. No one mentioned my father. No one asked about Haley or the baby. They just talked about the lavender I planted, how I repainted the front door myself, and Lena's famous brownies that everyone demanded the recipe for. We ate in the backyard, under string lights draped between 2 apple trees. Soft laughter, scattered conversation, no posturing, no pretending to be strong. I looked around and saw something I hadn't let myself believe before. I wasn't alone. I never had been. I was just put in the wrong setting, with the wrong people. After the party, I sat alone on the porch, a light shawl around my shoulders. In my hand was a photo of my mom resting on a small wooden table. "You see, Mom?" I whispered. I kept it. I didn't need her to answer. The warmth in my chest, spreading to my fingertips, said it all. Later that same month, I rewrote my own will. I didn't leave my estate to blood, but to trust. I designated the house to a community organization with one condition. If a child in foster care ever needed a place to restart their life, this home would be their starting point. I didn't do it to pass something down. I did it to break the cycle. The toxic chain of expectations that generations before us used to manipulate one another in the name of family. Because family isn't about blood. Family is the one who knocks when you're scared. The friend who makes tea and says nothing when you cry. The neighbor who brings over a can of paint because your door looks faded. It's my mom. A woman who worked herself to the bone and never asked for anything but kindness in return. Every step I take in this house now feels solid. Every glance out the garden, every cup of coffee in the morning, feels light. I'm not guarding the door. I'm not looking over my shoulder. I'm living. Truly living. Natalie's story reminds us that not everyone who claims to be family deserves a place in our lives. Blood ties can't replace respect, kindness, or healthy boundaries. Sometimes protecting what's yours, a home, a memory, or your peace, is how we honor the dignity of those who came before us. In a world where family is often used as a weapon, having the courage to say no is an act of strength. What do you think of Natalie's decision? Would you have done something different in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, powerful stories about family, trust, and resilience.